about types of retirement living in San Diego. So first of all, there's independent living. And so in the independent living, the needs that are being served are meals, housekeeping, activities, and transportation. Now, it varies quite a bit. There are some independent living communities where you'll have one meal. Your plan would be one meal because many people are still cooking in their own apartments. There are other independent living communities where maybe it's 3 meals. So it depends upon what's important to you. Many of them have meal plans. I saw when we did the survey, food came up. Food is so important in these communities. I often encourage clients, once you've narrowed it down, have lunch, right? Have lunch, make sure that this is really the place that you want to eat 3 meals a day, right? Because food is a critical component in choosing. So we also have housekeeping. Again, housekeeping is, some of the communities it's once a week, some of the communities it's every other week, so it depends. You can always add service, so let's say if it's every other week and you prefer once a week, you can certainly add that as an additional service. Again, it's really being clear on what it is that you want. Activities, oh my goodness, there is every activity you could possibly imagine in these communities. There's a community that actually has a miniature bowling alley. There are communities that have multiple movie theaters. They bring in all types of entertainment. They go to events. They'll go to the La Jolla Playhouse. They'll go over to Coronado. So again, looking at the different options that are available to you in terms of activities. I noticed somebody had put up something that made me think of like when I was looking for my dad. It was really important that he found a place that had Bible study. So again, you can know what's important to you, and that really helps us find the best option. Transportation, again, a wide variety. You'll have independent living communities that have large buses. They'll have smaller vans. There's a couple of communities that they take you in a Tesla. They have a fleet of Teslas, and then they'll take you to and from your appointments in a Tesla. So just it depends upon the community. So independent living, one thing to think about there is there's different styles. So there are some independent living communities that it's purely independent. That's all they offer is just independent living. Now they probably offer bringing in a caregiver. So if you needed help with assisted living or activities of daily living, you'd have that as an option. But the entire community is just independent living. There are other independent living options where it might be a separate building on a campus that includes assisted living and includes memory care. A third option is when a community has assisted living and independent living in the same building. So you'd be able to move in as independent living, and then once you needed services, they would include the services. In that particular situation, you're paying for the room rent, so you're paying for the rent of the room, and then and not paying for any activities of daily living or assistance with activities of daily living. So that's the independent living. This actually is a picture of a community here in San Diego County. They're beautiful. We like to call them cruise ships on land because the food is good, the activities are great. You just never leave port. So assisted living, you're in the same type of environment, so you have everything that's available to you in independent living is also available to you in the assisted living. And now they've added in the activities of daily living. And so Jacqueline spoke of this, but it's transferring. So my ability to get in and out of bed on my own, my ability to get in and out of a chair on my own, that would be transferring. There's bathing, grooming, dressing, and toileting. And what we're looking at is, can you do that on your own, or do you need someone to assist you? Do you need 2 people to assist you? So depending upon what your specific care needs are. And then memory care. So memory care supports someone who has a dementia diagnosis. So Jacqueline had gone into that, a definition of dementia. So memory care can support somebody with dementia. Some memory care communities will also support you with mild cognitive impairment as well, and then some focus primarily on dementia. Assisted living, including memory care, so it's licensed in the state of California. I only work with licensed communities, and they are called a RCFE, so Residential Care Facility for the Elderly. So if you ever hear that term, that's referring to assisted living in the state of California. It's just the terminology that we use. The oversight is by the Department of Social Services. and the legislation is Title 22. So just a little bit of background on how that is governed. There are about 600, believe it or not, 600 options in San Diego County. Now, 80% of these are the smaller residential care homes, or also known as a boarding care. You may also hear them called a 6-bed. So about 80% of the 600 are the smaller residential cares, the boarding cares, and about 20% are these large communities. And then memory care can be supported in the large communities and the smaller residential care homes with proper training. All right, so boarding care. So the boarding care is located in a residential neighborhood. Very good, very strong likelihood that there's one not far from where you live. I have a very robust database, and what I do is when I have the opportunity to meet with a family, I know that proximity is, I saw that showed up in the survey as well. Proximity is very important. So what I'll do is I'll put your address in the database, and then I'll be able to look to see what are the closest options that can meet your care needs. So in the home-like environment, this works very well for people who have advanced care needs. And so when I first started this, I always thought that if I did my job well, I'd find you the best place, and then you'd be set for the remainder of your life. But what I learned over time is that you may want to start in a community and take advantage of all those activities and those amenities, and the community was very high on the survey. So you may want to take advantage of everything that a community has to offer, but over time it may get to the point where it's all about the care. And when it's all about the care, these home-like environments might be the better fit. You're looking at having 3 residents to 1 caregiver, versus in a large community, it may be 12 residents to 1 caregiver. So it's a much higher focus on the individual in these smaller residential care homes. They can, with proper training, this is another important change, and we'll talk about changes, but this is another important aspect of these boarding cares, is that they can support these high levels of care. Many of them are owned by nurses, and so if someone needs a Hoyer lift, which is a mechanical movement out of bed into a wheelchair, out of bed into a chair. So if you need a Hoyer lift, that requires special training. If you need insulin injections, that requires an LVN to do those injections. So what's happened now is these boarding cares are able to support that higher care need because they're owned by nurses, or they have nurses that are working for them. The other thing to keep in mind about the smaller residential care homes is it is about the care, but you're not going to find the activities or the community that you would find in the larger community. So that's the one drawback. If you're looking for a lot of social activities, this probably isn't the best fit for you, but it is a great fit if you have very high care needs. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about what is a CCRC. So many of you have probably heard of the CCRC. There's several here in San Diego County, White Sands, the V, the Glen. So continuing care community offers long-term continuing care contract. That's the key word, is it's a contract. So they're entering into a contract with you saying that they will meet your care needs through end of life. So that's what separates a CCRC from these other communities that we looked at. The other communities and the residential care home, it is a 30-day notice. So there's not a contract. You're renting space, and you can give 30-day notice, and then you can move on. Whereas these continuing care communities, you're entering into a contract. I always tell clients, we've got it on the slide, if you're considering a CCRC, definitely meet with your financial advisor, have a conversation with your attorney, because you are entering into a contract. There's also a large buy-in when you're going into a CCRC. So you may be looking at $1 million, $500,000, $1.5 million to get into some of these communities. Again, the advantage is that they're caring for you through end of life. So changes over the past 10 years. So we've got an increase in the level of care that's provided significantly by the boarding cares. So it used to be that we would go, under certain conditions, we would go into a skilled nursing facility. Anymore, all that prevents you from staying in assisted living is if you're on a ventilator or if you have a continuous IV. Pretty much everything else, believe it or not, feeding tubes, pressure sores, can be supported in an assisted living community as long as they have the right training. And again, this is where those boarding cares come into play, because they have that training and they are able to support those care needs, which is a preferable environment for many, many people, to be in a home-like environment versus being in an institutional setting of a skilled nursing facility. So this is definitely limited the need to go to a skilled nursing facility, because these smaller residential care homes can now support those needs. All right, this is always the big question in the room. What does this cost? So here's the cost. I purposely put this slide in here. That slide to the right there, that's those national statistics. And the intention behind putting this particular slide is that you can just see that steep incline. And that steep incline took place in 2020. And what we saw happen in the industry is a significant shortage of caregivers, right? We're in the pandemic, significant shortage of caregivers, and then, also an increase in wages. So coming out of the pandemic, there was an increase, coming out of the pandemic, there was an increase in wages for caregivers. So that's that steep climb that you're seeing there. So what that looks like in terms of in-home care. So in-home care is you're bringing somebody into your own home, right? So I'm gonna stay at home as long as I can, but I'm gonna bring in some in-home care. So in that in-home care, 10 years ago, that was $22 an hour, right? Okay. Currently, it's $38 an hour. 10 years from now, it's projected to be $48 an hour to bring somebody in your home to provide in-home care. Now, the challenge when you bring somebody home, in your home to provide in-home care is usually there's going to be a minimum number of hours that they're going to work, and there's going to be a minimum number of days per week that they're going to want to work for their caregivers, right? So it becomes very, very expensive because you want somebody to come in and help you shower twice a week, but they're coming in for a minimum of 2 hours or a minimum of 4 hours, or a minimum of twice a week. So the costs add up quickly when you're bringing in in-home care. Cost for assisted living, so the median cost 10 years ago was $39.83. 10 years ago, $39.83 San Diego County. Currently, $72.50. $72.50 a month is the median currently in San Diego County. 10 years from now, $97.43 is what's projected. So the cost of assisted living is going up significantly. So to Jacqueline's earlier point, 70% is our behaviors, right? And so taking care of ourselves now so that we can stay in our homes will save us cost long term. The other point I think is important to make is that if you're paying for more than 6.5 hours of in-home care per day, it's actually more cost effective to go into an assisted living community. I can tell you this number a few years ago was 8 hours, but as the costs go up, it now becomes more cost effective to go into assisted living versus having in-home care. All right, narrowing down the options. I know I've just a couple minutes, so narrowing down the options. So somebody comes to me, here's what I do. First and foremost, I start with what are your care needs, because that's critically important. I have to know what your specific care needs are in order to find the right places. Going back to 600 RCFPs in San Diego County, right? So you got 600. If you need insulin injections, I'm down to 20. From 600 down to 20, that quick, because you need insulin injections, because it's difficult to support. The other things that are made, so two-person transfer, Hoyer lift, those things. Also, I'm trying to find out who can support your specific care needs. So I'm narrowing it down from the 600 options down to what's important. Geography, you want to be close to your spouse, you want to be close to your adult children. You live in North County, you don't want to be on the coast because you don't like the fog, right? So whatever that is, having that information helps me narrow it down. Budget, are you a veteran? Is there a possibility you have any benefits as a veteran? Do you have a long-term care insurance policy? Do you have a life insurance policy? Do you own your home? Are you eligible for Medi-Cal? Would you consider Mexico as an option? Mexico positions themselves as double the care for half the cost. I can tell you, just being there recently, it's double the care for a third of the cost, because their costs are not rising anywhere near as fast as ours are. All right, challenging conditions. So these are the things that make it a little bit more challenging. And Jacqueline spoke to this a little bit in terms of family dynamics. So family dynamics can be challenging when siblings don't get along, or you've got a second or third marriage and it's the spouse's adult children and they don't see eye to eye. So the dynamics can be challenging, and that's where a professional like us can step in and kind of be that mediator. The POA, oh my goodness, please, I'm guessing everybody in this room has their POA, has an alternate name. I cannot tell you the number of times I've had a situation, husband and wife, they named each other for power of attorney. They both have dementia. Now, neither one has capacity to make decisions. So please make sure you have a power of attorney, make sure you have an alternate name. That's very challenging. Crisis that requires placement directly from the hospital, because now what happens is I'm down to very few options, right? I'm dealing with a situation right now. There were only 3 options where the care needs could be met, because the person's being discharged from the hospital in the next day. So that can be challenging. Long-term care insurance, this is just heartbreaking. Jacqueline shared the story of a couple that could have taken advantage of their long-term care policy 2 years prior, and yet they didn't, and so that money was gone, right? Where they could have had care in the home and they just didn't use their policy. Specific care needs, including insulin, yes, that can be more challenging. We can do it, but it can be more challenging to find when there are difficult care needs. And I have 2 memory care communities in San Diego County that will allow for your pet, and they will take care of your pet. So bring me your challenge, we will figure it out, but these are the ones that are a little bit more challenging. Thank you for having us here today.